2001, I got into an accident while playing basketball at school. I suffered a fracture, and it took nearly a month for me to recover. My parents told me I still needed another week of rest before I could walk normally again. At first, I couldn't even walk without crutches. Later, I was able to move around slowly, but my legs were still weak, and I couldn't do anything physically demanding. It was an ordinary Saturday, and I was home alone because my parents had gone out shopping. I was sitting in front of the TV, bored out of my mind, so I started staring out the window. That's when I saw a girl, around 14 or 15 years old. She was thin, covered in bloodstains, wearing a dress, and completely soaked by the rain. The rain was pouring heavily, and she was trembling from the cold. Seeing her like that made my heart ache. It looked like she wanted to cross the road, but traffic was non-stop, and she had no chance of making it safely. For some reason, I suddenly became really worried about her. I forced myself up, grabbed a large umbrella from the cabinet, and headed outside. When I noticed there weren't any cars coming for the moment, I motioned for her to come over. She hesitated at first, but just then, a huge truck suddenly sped toward us. Without thinking, I rushed into the street and grabbed her clothes. We both tumbled onto the roadside just in time, barely avoiding the truck. She helped me stand back up. When I touched her skin, it felt ice cold. I asked her where she was going and why she had been standing on the road for so long. She told me that her name was Xiao An and that her mother had sent her to her aunt's house to get something. On her way back, heavy rain suddenly started pouring down, and because the traffic on the road was non-stop, she got stranded by the roadside. I called her by name and invited her inside the house to take shelter from the rain. At first, she hesitated a little, but she had no other choice. In the end, she agreed. After entering the house, I brought a large towel and helped wipe the rainwater off her body. She thanked me. We chatted for a while, but she kept talking about wanting to go inside the house quickly. I brought her a cup of hot chocolate. After some time, the rain finally stopped, and I walked her to the door. I noticed that her house was only a few streets away from mine. When my parents came back home, I told them that I had met Xiao An. The moment my mother heard her name, she suddenly became nervous. Then she got up and went to bed. By then, I was already used to her strange behavior. But when I said that I wanted to go back to school next week, she suddenly fell silent. My father asked me whether I was able to stand properly now. I rubbed my chest and said that I was fine. I had been so bored staying at home that I felt like I was almost getting fat. My mother then went to prepare lunch. I asked her if she was okay, and she quietly said she was fine. A little later, I noticed two men nearby. One of them was talking on the phone. The moment they looked at us, the man's eyes widened in fear, and he quickly pulled his partner away. Something about it felt wrong. The fear in his eyes was way too obvious. Were they robbers? I didn't tell my parents anything, but I decided to stay alert that night. That evening, my parents went to bed early, and I lay awake in my room. I tried convincing myself I was overthinking things, but after a while, I suddenly heard the sound of glass shattering outside. I immediately became alert. Then I heard noises coming from the living room. A gunshot echoed through the house. I peeked out and saw three masked men moving around inside our home. One of them was about to leave when I accidentally made a noise and drew their attention. A man wearing a black ski mask pulled out a gun and pointed it directly at me. I froze in terror. He gestured for another robber, the one holding a knife, to grab me. Suddenly, another robber let out a horrifying scream. At that exact moment, the power in the entire house went out. The only light left came from the pale moonlight shining through the windows. The man with the knife lunged at me. Panicking, I grabbed a box cutter nearby and slashed his hand. He punched me hard in the face, and we started struggling on the floor. Then suddenly, a figure appeared at the doorway. Both of us froze. Under the moonlight, I finally saw who it was. It was Xiao An, but her eyes were glowing bright red as if they were burning with fire. Blood stained the corners of her mouth. Her fingernails had become long and razor sharp, dripping with blood. The man with the gun fired at her immediately, but she moved faster than anything human. In an instant, she slashed across his face, sank her teeth into his neck, and dragged him outside. I took the opportunity to kick the robber beside me to the ground and ran after them. At the street corner, I witnessed something I would never forget for the rest of my life. Xiao An was crouched over one of the robbers, violently tearing into him. The other two robbers' bodies lay in pools of blood, their organs scattered everywhere. She turned to me and explained that she had heard robbers were planning to break into my house, so she came to help me. She told me to hand the surviving robber over to the police. She said she would take care of the other two bodies herself, so I wouldn't become a suspect. I silently nodded. Then I watched enormous wings spread from her back. She grabbed the two corpses and flew up into the stormy night sky. Within seconds, she disappeared into the clouds. The surviving robber collapsed to the ground in complete terror. He tried to run, but by then, the neighbors had already been awakened by the commotion and started coming outside. There was no escape for him. I quickly called the police. The officers arrived soon after and arrested the surviving robber. When my parents finally woke up, they said they had slept unusually deeply. We guessed the robbers must have used some kind of sleeping gas on them. The police didn't believe the robber's story about encountering a vampire. They assumed he had made it up to avoid punishment. The next day, I looked out the window, but Xiao An was nowhere to be seen. I asked several neighbors about her, but every single one of them insisted there had never been any girl named Xiao An living in the area. That's when I realized she had never told me the truth from the beginning, but strangely, I wasn't afraid of her at all. Instead, I felt nothing but gratitude. She had saved my life. A week later, I returned to school and started playing basketball again. Life slowly returned to normal, but I could never forget her. Sometimes I even wondered if she hadn't looked like that terrifying creature, maybe things between us could have turned out differently. Years later, I met the woman who would become my wife. Oddly enough, she looked almost exactly like Xiao An. Only her personality and voice were different. I knew she was an ordinary person. We got married, had children, and built a happy life together. But even now, whenever it rains, I can't help looking out the window. For a brief moment, it feels like I can still see that rain-soaked girl standing across the street, but every time I blink, she vanishes like mist. I know now, my connection with Xiao An ended on that stormy night long ago, but the fact that she saved my life is something I will remember forever.